Now, depending on which version of React Redux you're using, if you're using version 7 or higher, you can also use an alternative to the connect method or function, which we're always using to connect our component to Redux. So right now I always use to connect higher order function, and there's nothing wrong with using that, by the way. You can absolutely use that with functional components too, but you could also switch away from this, and there are certain hooks which are now offered by React Redux. So in the Burger Builder JS file from React Redux, you can also import usedispatch and useselector. And these are two important hooks for allowing you to get data from your Redux store and to dispatch actions. So let's scroll to the bottom of the Burger Builder JS container now. And there you see I'm mapping 5 actions to dispatch something. Now with usedispatch, we can simply grab that code here, copy it, and then go somewhere to the top of this component, let's say here after we initialize state, and we can call usedispatch. And what this gives us is, in the end, simply a dispatch function. Now I could paste in the code I just copied, where I define onIngredient added and so on, and define onIngredient added as a constant, which holds in the end a function where I get the ingredient name, and then I call dispatch, now referring to this dispatch function which usedispatch gives us, which of course is a function that dispatches an action to our Redux store. And we can do the same for all other functions we have here. So also for onIngredient removed, turn this into a constant which holds an anonymous function in the end. Same here for onInit ingredients, and make sure you get rid of these commas at the end of the lines and use semicolons instead. And then the same here for onInit purchase. It's a constant now which holds a function, and also for onSetOff redirect path. It's a function now, or a constant holding a function. Now we of course no longer have to extract onInit ingredients from props, because now it's no longer part of props, because we'll soon no longer use connect to add this to props, so we can remove that here. We have it as a function here now. And in all the other places where I called onIngredient added and so on, in all these places, we now can get rid of props. So here, props onIngredient added, it's now just onIngredient added. Props onIngredient removed, just onIngredient removed. Because we define these functions now all up there with the help of this dispatch function we're getting from usedispatch, which we in turn are getting from React Redux. So all of course for onInit purchase, where am I using that? Down there, let's remove the props thing. And also last but not least, onSetOff redirect path, let's remove props. So that you make sure that you're always just calling these functions now without props in front of that. That's really important. Yeah, looks good. Now the same for selecting values. Map state to props. Here we're returning an object where we get the ingredients, price, error, and so on. We can use the useSelector function for that, the useSelector hook here. Again, by going to the top of the Burger Builder, let's say here, and calling useSelector. And useSelector now takes a function as an argument, which will give you your current state, because this function will be executed by React Redux, and it will give you your current state snapshot. And then you return a value here. So here in the function body, you return a value. And the value you return here will in the end then be the result of your useSelector call. So here in this component, we could say we're interested in some Burger Builder state, and then also in our auth state and is authenticated. So I'll copy all of that so that I have it for reference and add that up here just so that I can see it whilst we work on this useSelector call. Now let's see how we can extract this in an elegant way. For example, we could manage 4 different values here. We could have our INGs, our ingredients, by calling useSelector, and there we get our state. And now here we want to return state dot burger builder. So basically what I do up there, dot ingredients. So basically what I'm extracting up here. The difference now just is I'll do this 4 times so that I have simply 4 different constants where I manage that state. So also for the price, calling useselector, there we'll get the state, and I want to return state burger builder dot total price. So essentially what I returned or extracted up there. Then also the error here where I call useselector, get my state, and we return state burger builder error. And for is authenticated, I'll use useselector state and return myself state.off.token. To be precise, I return the result whether that's null or not. With that, I can get rid of this up here. And now you might wonder, why would we do this? Well, it's now closer to the logic we also could use with the help of useState, where we also manage different states and different constants instead of having one large object where all our state is merged. We're doing the same here. We're extracting the 4 pieces of information we need in this component from our Redux state with useSelector. And of course, we could have also worked with one constant and extract just burger builder here, which is an object with multiple states in there. But managing this as 4 individual states is a bit cleaner in my opinion, and therefore now in all the places where we used props.ings, we now just use ings because, well, this is now a standalone constant, this ings thing here. So also here where we had props.ings, use just ings because this is the constant we just created. Also down here. So you can simply search the entire file for all occurrences of props.ings and remove the props thing. Here that I see it, we can also already get rid of props.price because we're also managing price as a standalone constant now. Same for is authenticated, so I'll fix this right away too. And that's looking good. Now for price, let me quickly search this. If we have props.price anywhere. Nope, that's looking good. Now for error, there we have props.error, so I want to get rid of that. And now this is looking all right. And for is authenticated, here we have props is authenticated. Let's get rid of that. It's now also looking good. With all of that, we can get rid of these 2 constants at the bottom, map state to props and map dispatch to props, and get rid of the entire connect function here. And again, this is optional. You can absolutely continue to use connect. Using these new hooks is optional. I just want to show them to you so that you know that these are alternatives. And now we would have a problem though. If we now save this and we go to the network tab on our page, you'll see that our requests are shooting up. We're sending request after request. Now to stop that from happening, let's quickly comment out on init ingredients, save this so that it rebuilds. And let's now find out why this effect fired all the time. It fired all the time because, well, it fires whenever on init ingredients changes. This is now a constant we create here, which holds a function. And again, functions are just objects in JavaScript. Now, this constant will be recreated whenever this entire burger builder component is re-executed, whenever this functional component function executes again, right? So for every re-rendering of the burger builder, we're recreating on init ingredients. We're actually recreating all these functions. Now that simply means that on init ingredients will change whenever this component rebuilds, and therefore this effect will effectively run whenever this component rebuilds. This is of course not what I want. Now we rely on dispatch here though, which we get from usedispatch, which we, because of the rules of hooks, can only call inside of this component. So we can't outsource this function, this onInit ingredients function, into a place outside of this component. But instead we can use another hook introduced by React, useCallback. UseCallback, you learned about this in the React hooks module, can be wrapped around a function to avoid that this gets recreated all the time. So here we simply put this function where we dispatch init ingredients into useCallback, and now useCallback takes a second argument First argument is the function you're wrapping. Second argument is a list of dependencies of this function, which tells React when it should actually rebuild this function. And here we have no real external dependencies because dispatch is already configured to not rebuild on every recreation of that function. So we don't need to add it. We could add it, but it should be managed by React Redux such that it isn't recreated all the time. So now with that, we ensure that onInit ingredients actually will cache the value, this function here, and not recreate this function object for every recreation or every re-rendering of this component. So if we do that and we comment this back in and we save this, now we actually see we have no infinite amount of requests anymore because of the usage of useCallback. And again, make sure you went through that React hooks module, the module before this one, because there I also explained useCallback in more depth and also how we can use it to optimize performance or avoid unnecessary re-render cycles. Here it's crucial to avoid an infinite loop. And with that, we're using useselector and usedispatch instead of the connect higher order component. Using it is optional, you don't have to use it, and I won't replace connect in all places in this app with usedispatch and useselector, but of course I wanted to show it to you so that you are aware of this option in case you want to use hooks everywhere and you don't want to use the connect higher order component anymore.